Part 15. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 141. Nan 11 was wearing a long red gauze dress with exquisite makeup. The phoenix crown and harem were not yet on her upper body, but this red dress was already eye-catching enough. The girl's bright and dazzling face came into view, instantly filling her heart, and her internal organs seemed to soften instantly. Nan 11 looked at him with a smile. "Miss me?" Rong Yu hummed lowly, sat down next to her, and held her hand quietly. "Are you tired?" "I'm not tired." Nan 11 shook her head and said in a soft voice, "Only those who carry the sedan are tired." Rong Yu shook his head. "No. The people carrying the sedan are all experts from Canyon Mountain, and their physical strength is not that bad." Of course Nan 11 knew it, so she smiled and said, "It's a good thing they are all martial arts masters, otherwise ordinary people wouldn't be able to carry the sedan for such a long distance. Even if Rong Yu got into the sedan at this time and added weight, it would make no difference to the experts who lifted the sedan." Rong Yu said nothing and gently held her in his arms, enjoying the quiet and soft atmosphere in the sedan. "What's wrong?" Nan 11 turned her head and looked at him, noticing that she seemed to be in a bad mood. "After returning to the imperial capital, did the emperor make things difficult for you?" Rong Yu stared at her beautiful features, was silent for a moment, and shook his head gently. "It's not the emperor, it's the Queen Mother." "Queen Mother? Why is she making things difficult for you?" "Is it because of me?" Nan 11 frowned, with a hint of anger evident in her brows. "I just don't understand. She is a majestic Queen Mother with a noble status and supreme honor. She wants to no matter what, even the emperor must abide by his filial piety in front of her. There are so many people in the palace waiting for her. What else can she be dissatisfied about? She has to let the prince pull her son off the throne so that mother and son can behave better? The girl has always been gentle and bright. For more than a month, she has been obedient and gentle in front of Rong Yu, and she has never lost her temper. It's not that Rong Yu has never seen her angry before, but the reasons for her anger before and her anger today are different. The anger before was directed at him, but today it was to protect him." This thought flashed through Rong Yu's mind, and the color of her eyes became softer and softer. She picked up her black and smooth hair with her slender white fingers, and the smile on her lips could not be concealed. "Don't worry, no one will do anything to me." Nan 11 looked at him suspiciously. "Really?" Rong Yu nodded. "Really?" Nan 11 was silent for a moment, but the Queen Mother is an elder after all. "When the late emperor was in power, I didn't take her seriously," Rong Yu said calmly. "Now if she wants to act like a sister-in-law and a mother, it depends on whether I am willing or not." Nan 11 nodded. "That's right. However, this sounds like the Queen Mother is indeed troubled by him because of her marriage, otherwise she would not suddenly act like a elder sister-in-law and a mother-in-law." Thinking like this, she couldn't help but frown again. "You really don't feel embarrassed? If there is anything unhappy, the prince must tell me and we will share the burden together. Shall we share it together?" In one sentence, 6 words, people can hear the taste of happiness. Rong Yu thought quietly that for the rest of their lives, they would share all the joy, anger, sorrow, and joy together. No, there was no anger or sorrow, there was only joy and peace in their lives from now on. "Okay." Rong Yu's voice was gentler than ever before. "Let's share the burden together. If necessary, I can help you vent your anger." A smile flashed across Rong Yu's face. "How do you want to help me vent my anger?" "You don't understand." Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. "The Queen Mother is your sister-in-law. They say that a sister-in-law is like a mother. If the prince is too rude to her, it will be offended. Even if the Queen Mother is rude first, the world will also feel that the prince should be respectful." At this point, she sneered. "I'm so respectful. For a sister-in-law who just wants to find trouble, I think it's okay to let her cool off or stay away." Rong Yu chuckled. "I think so too. Then we husband and wife have the same view. Nan 11 curled up her lips, a pleasant smile appeared on her eyebrows. Also, men bullying women will make people feel rude, so if the Queen Mother troubles you again, just let me come forward. She and I are both women, and women's wars should be resolved in women's ways. Although the Queen Mother has a noble status, she is not a vegetarian. Wrong, you can be tough in front of the Emperor. What does she, the regent princess, have to fear in front of the Queen Mother? I don't believe that mother and son really dare to be arrogant in front of Rong Yu, who is in charge of 400,000 troops and horses. Anyway, I don't have a good reputation. Nan 11 smiled, with a calm attitude. They all think that I am a businessman and I am too vulgar to be worthy of you. In this case, I will simply learn to be strong. First, be a tacky and tough regent. Most people in this world bully good and fear evil. If I keep swallowing my anger, they will become more energetic. If I fight back violently in time, they may be shocked and dare not say a word. Wrong, you liked to see her domineering look and couldn't help but kiss her forehead. You're right. Your Majesty, don't look at those ladies who are dignified and elegant on weekdays. When they speak sarcastically to others, they are not elegant at all. They just insert knives into others. Nan 11 said, however, if someone is tougher than them, they will only. I'm afraid I'll give in immediately, that's human nature. Wrong, you completely agreed with her words. My concubine is right. I will support you from now on. You can be as tough as you want. Beloved concubine? As a husband? Hearing this title unexpectedly, Nan 11 was stunned, and then her pretty face turned slightly red. I didn't expect that the prince would also be charming sometimes. Rong Yu looked at her with tenderness in his eyes. No matter what this girl looks like, gentle or dignified, bright or fierce, or as shy as this moment, she is a cinnabar mole engraved in his heart, making him sink. He has long been possessed by the devil, trapped in her magic barrier and unable to extricate himself, and he is unwilling to break free forever. Even if he dies, he is willing to do so. In the evening, the team arrived at Fenyang City, which is only 80 miles away from the imperial city. Rong Yu and Nan 11 got off the sedan chair and stayed in a separate courtyard to rest for a night. Bathing and changing clothes, sleeping on separate beds, abandoning the custom that men and women cannot meet before marriage. The next morning, he got up early to wash and dress, draw eyebrows and put on makeup, put on a gorgeous and grand phoenix crown and bridal robe, sat in the sedan chair, and continued on the road. The noble and handsome man was dressed in a bright red wedding dress, sitting upright on the horse's back, with a dazzling glow on his noble eyebrows and eyes, and his body faded away in difference, leaving only a tenderness like the sea. April 18th, an auspicious day, suitable for marriage. The honorable regent of the Great Zhou welcomed his princess into the imperial city. A 10-mile red carpet was spread all over the ground, leading directly from the gate of the imperial city to the regent's palace. Gongs and drums were beating on both sides of the street, and big red lanterns were hung high in the capital. Under the hustle and bustle of the crowd, 8 tall horses led the way in front, and the gorgeous sedan slowly came into view, which was so amazing that it made people hold their breath. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 142. There were 8 agile white horses with red silk behind them to escort them. The crimson tassel curtains on the side of the sedan chair fluttered in the wind, and the air seemed to be filled with a faint fragrance. This is the bride. In the sedan chair, a noble and beautiful woman was seen sitting dignifiedly, wearing a luxurious phoenix crown and a dazzling dress. It was a pity that the curtain blocked the view, and only the general outline of the bride's figure could be seen, but the face of the beauty in the sedan chair could not be seen clearly. Tens of thousands of people gathered on both sides of the imperial road, but no one made a sound at this time, as if they were all shocked by such unparalleled nobility. The wedding specifications that all women in the world envied were grand and magnificent. The regent's marriage really shocked the world. Such a grand ceremony, such luxury and nobility, almost caught up with the scale of the ceremony of the king's coronation. How could it not make people envious and jealous? However, while everyone was envious, they couldn't help but feel strange. Wasn't Miss Nan 11, the future princess of the regent's mansion, the legitimate daughter of the prime minister's mansion? Why didn't she marry directly from the prime minister's mansion? The regent took people out of the city yesterday, and only came back to welcome the bride today. Where did he bring Miss Nan here? This doubt came to mind, and everyone couldn't help but think of what happened in the prime minister's mansion a few days ago. The prime minister's wife divorced her husband in public on the prime minister's birthday, and didn't even give the emperor face. In the end, the emperor was so angry that he left in anger, and the prime minister also lost face. This major event was spread all over the city and was a hot topic. In those days, almost everyone in the imperial capital was discussing this matter, and they talked about it as a joke after dinner. Although they didn't dare to laugh at the current prime minister blatantly, the law did not punish the masses, and this was neither a secret nor a taboo in the royal family, so it was okay to discuss it quietly. The prime minister became a joke in the city for a while. Most men criticized and condemned Madame Nan's rebellious act of divorcing her husband, but the ladies and girls in the inner house laughed openly, but secretly couldn't help but envy Madame Nan's courage. How many women in the world dare to do such a thing as divorcing their husbands in public? Moreover, the prime minister is in a high position and has great power. Madame Nan is just a merchant girl born in a humble family in the eyes of everyone. No one expected that she would do such a shocking thing. Of course, the regent seemed to stand on Madame Nan's side at the birthday banquet that day, so Prime Minister Nan had to swallow his anger. Some people even said that Miss Nan publicly supported her mother and said that if the regent dared to take a concubine in the future, she would divorce her husband without hesitation, which was simply unbelievable. Are this mother and daughter stupid or courageous? Of course, no matter whether Madame Nan and Nan 11 are stupid or not, this incident is definitely the most embarrassing thing for the Prime Minister since he became an official. It made him lose face and face the elders of Jiangdong. So is this the reason why Nan 11 did not marry out of the Prime Minister's mansion? As everyone was guessing, they saw the sedan stopped outside the gate of the regent's palace. On a tall horse leading the way, a gentle and handsome young man rode to the sedan and looked at the dignified and majestic gate of the regent's palace. His voice was gentle and indifferent, but everyone around could hear it. Today is the day when my eldest daughter of Juxiao Pavilion is getting married and marrying the regent of Dazhu. I hope the regent will treat my daughter well in the future, and I also hope that the subjects of Dazhu can treat my eldest daughter well. The words fell slowly and concisely. There was no long speech or deliberate warning, but it was like a thunderclap in the plain, catching everyone off guard. Juxiao Pavilion. The Juxiao Pavilion with power all over the world. The bride who married the regent today was actually the eldest daughter of Juxiao Pavilion? Didn't the regent marry the eldest daughter of the Nan family? How did she become the eldest daughter of Juxiao Pavilion? What is going on? Everyone was stunned, not understanding what was going on. On the day of the regent's wedding, many guests came to the palace, including royal relatives, nobles, and civil and military ministers. Although most people were sitting in the hall, a few came out to watch the excitement of the wedding. At this time, the man's words instantly caused an uproar. Whether it was those who were watching the excitement or those who came to participate in the regent's wedding ceremony today, they were all shocked and confused. The future princess that the regent was going to marry was obviously the eldest daughter of the Nan family. A few days ago, the regent was still protecting the eldest daughter of the Nan family and would not marry anyone else. Why did he change to a married girl now? Under the silent attention of everyone, the cold and noble regent dismounted and walked to the sedan chair. Kick the sedan door. This is the rule of marriage. Everyone watched in silence. Yin Yu, who changed into a dark red dress for the first time today, stood beside the sedan chair and bent over to open the curtain. Everyone was surprised. Didn't the regent want to kick the sedan door? Why did he open the sedan chair directly? Nan 11, who was sitting in the sedan chair, felt the surroundings fell into a brief silence but also a lively atmosphere. She was a little nervous, but she saw a slender and beautiful hand suddenly stretched out from the sedan chair. Nan 11 was slightly startled, raised her eyes and met the man's gentle and noble eyes. A slight smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, which made her eyebrows look soft like water. She slowly handed her hand to him. The regent took out today's bride from the sedan chair. The surroundings were as quiet as snow, and everyone looked at the girl who was taken out of the sedan chair by the regent in amazement. The girl in the phoenix crown and bridal robe had clear facial features in everyone's sight. Everyone was stunned again. Nan, Miss Nan? Under the bright sunlight, the girl's face was absolutely beautiful and refined, her eyes were as shimmering as glass, her red lips were slightly pursed with a smile, and her bright face was filled with some joy and shyness that belonged to a newlywed. The beautiful and noble wedding dress exuded a dazzling and hot color in the sun, and the double-layered wide sleeves of gold thread showed her noble and elegant temperament. There was a red gold collar inlaid with rubies on the chest, a long skirt embroidered with phoenixes in gold thread, and crystal clear priceless rubies on the skirt. It was beautiful and dazzling. Everyone was stunned, looking at the gentle and smiling woman in the arms of the regent in amazement and distraction. Nan 11? The eldest lady of the Prime Minister's mansion? The eldest lady of Juxiao Pavilion? What is going on? The whole world celebrated, the red makeup was 10 miles long, and the whole city was filled with gongs and drums. It was really just for this merchant girl who was looked down upon by the world. The palace had already been decorated festively, with lights and decorations, and it was very lively. The sound of bells and drums continued to echo in the ears, and accompanied by the voices of joy and blessings from the crowd, the noble regent of the great Zhou dynasty entered the palace with his princess in his arms. The Shao music was melodious, and the zither and harp sounded harmoniously. The ceremonial officer of the Ministry of Rites announced in front of the palace that the ceremony was over and invited the prince and princess to enter the palace. Rong Yu was about to take Nan 11 into the palace when he suddenly heard a report from a distance, "The emperor and the queen have arrived." Author's words. This chapter was written slowly, and the next chapter may have to wait until daytime to read. Babies, go to bed after reading it, don't stay up late, good night. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 143. The joyous noise in the palace suddenly quieted down. Nan 11 raised her eyes quietly, her face as beautiful as autumn water reflected the phoenix crown and bridal robe. She was extremely beautiful, calm, and gentle, her red lips curled up with a faint smile, like a graceful green orchid, graceful and elegant, but also charming. Your Highness, long live, long live, long live, long live. Your Highness, long live, long live, long live, long live. Everyone bowed down to salute. You all stand up. The handsome and elegant emperor spoke in a gentle tone, his eyes fell on the pair of people in the palace, his eyes met Nan 11's beautiful face, his breath was slightly choked, and then he smiled calmly. The queen and I are here to join in the fun, drink a glass of wedding wine, and congratulate the young emperor on his happy wedding and the harmonious couple. His expression was calm and smiling, as if the unpleasantness a few days ago had never happened. As expected, the emperor is the best at disguise, and the saying that the emperor's heart is unpredictable has never been wrong. Even if he has a murderous intention in his heart, he can still send blessings with a smile on his face. Being in the royal family, he has been exposed to power struggles since childhood and has long been accustomed to the treacherous palace, so being two-faced has long been a habit. Nan 11 lowered her eyes and couldn't help but hold Rong Yu's hand again. His status and military power were won by his ability. As the youngest brother of the previous emperor and the youngest son of Emperor Jingming, if he was not strong, who could sincerely protect him? I'm afraid he would have been torn to pieces in this palace that eats people without spitting bones. But isn't the queen still under house arrest? She came today. Sure enough, she took advantage of this happy day to calculate that Rong Yu would not make fun of her, so she wanted to take the opportunity to lift the punishment of house arrest. Thank you for your blessing, Your Majesty, Rong Yu said in a light tone. Because of the great joy today, his mood was good, and his voice was less indifferent than usual, and it sounded a little warmer. Come on, please ask the emperor to take a seat. Rong Chuiun smiled lightly, no hurry, I haven't toasted my uncle yet. As soon as the voice fell, a servant next to him respectfully presented a wine cup. Rong Chuiun raised his hand and took a cup of fine wine. This cup of wine is for my uncle. Rong Yu took it and drank it all. Rong Chuiun poured another cup. This cup of wine is for my aunt. The emperor toasted in public. Even if she was the regent princess, she must accept the wine with trepidation and gratitude. However, Nan 11 just smiled calmly, said thank you, Your Majesty, and was about to reach out to take the wine cup. But suddenly a hand stretched out from the side and took the wine cup before her. 11er is not good at drinking, this cup should be drunk by me. After that, he drank it all again. There was a commotion in the hall. The imperial uncle is mighty. The imperial uncle really loves the imperial aunt to the core of his heart. Even if Rong Chuiun was unhappy, he would not show it in front of so many people. Besides, he came here to send blessings today. If he put on an imperial air here, it would be narrow-minded. But he still had doubts in his heart, so he couldn't help but speak, with a deep tone, the imperial aunt is the daughter of Juxiao Pavilion? How come I have never heard of it? When this was said, all the clan members present were shocked. The daughter of Juxiao Pavilion? Nan 11 smiled calmly, with a frank look. After my mother divorced my father, I was taken to Juxiao Pavilion by the people sent by my mother. So Madame Nan is the master of Juxiao Pavilion. The mother-in-law of the master of Juxiao Pavilion can barely be regarded as a master. Nan 11 nodded with a clear conscience, without any guilty conscience on her face, yes. Rong Chuiun clenched his hands suddenly. Madame Nan is actually the master of Juxiao Pavilion? No wonder she had the courage to make the decision to divorce her husband, but all these years. Why haven't you ever heard anyone mention it in all these years? If he had known that she was the master of Juxiao Pavilion, he would never have watched her divorce Nan Xiang. Nan 11 said calmly, my mother is low-key. She just wanted to live a good life with my father. She didn't expect my father to be so unreliable. She was heartbroken. She sent someone to tell me her identity after divorcing her husband. Rong Chuiun thought about Juxiao Pavilion in his heart and couldn't help regretting it. He wanted to ask something else, but heard Rong Yu say, does the emperor have a lot of questions to ask? The emperor's expression paused, and he changed the topic swiftly, it's a rare happy day. How about all the royal brothers toast to the emperor uncle? It's not uncommon to make a scene in the wedding hall on the day of the wedding. Even if the royal rules are strict, it's hard not to want to make it lively. Originally, due to the regent's heavy dignity, the young royal children among the clan members, even if they are of the same age as him, dare not be too presumptuous because of their seniority. However, the emperor's opening words at this time undoubtedly emboldened the other people who were eager to try. Starting from the king of Qi and the king of Lu, all the princes, dukes, and princes raised their glasses from the table. Rong Yu's eyebrows were indifferent, and a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. Nan 11 shook his hand and silently comforted him. It's better for us brothers to drink a few cups first. It's rare for the little uncle to get married today. We must not miss the auspicious time for the newlyweds. A young man in the hall stood up, holding a wine cup, attracting everyone's attention. It's not too late to toast the uncle later when you have time. What do you think, third brother? The atmosphere was slightly tense. Although the young men present usually laughed and pretended to be stupid, they knew in their hearts that the emperor and the regent were not on good terms. So whether they really wanted to join in the fun or had other purposes, helping the regent at this critical juncture was almost equivalent to going against the emperor. The man who spoke was the current King Yun, the seventh prince in the royal family, Rong Chuxiu. He had just reached the age of 20 this year and had always been low-key and indifferent, not vying for fame and fortune, and his presence was not very strong. He had not participated in the previous battle for the throne among the princes and had never been involved, so the power he had accumulated was not as great as that of the others, and he was not as popular as them. However, after the current emperor ascended the throne, he was not suppressed as much. So this sentence came from the mouth of Prince Yun, and it generally played the role of livening up the atmosphere. It was not about helping anyone, nor was it about opposing anyone. His Majesty glanced at him with a somewhat cold look in his eyes, but he did not say anything else in the end, and said lightly, "In this case, I will not delay the auspicious time of the emperor's uncle and aunt." The ceremonial officer of the Ministry of Rites was already trembling with fear, standing aside, fearing that the emperor and the regent would quarrel on the day of great joy. Fortunately, the emperor seemed to have really come to bless today, and he did not say anything more after being smoothed over by Prince Yun. The ceremonial officer hurriedly sang loudly, "Enter the bridal chamber." The veil fell lightly, covering the bride's beautiful face. Just now, outside the palace gate, Rong Yu wanted to let people see Nan 11, and let everyone know who he married today, who was the mistress of the Regent Palace, and who was the daughter of Juxiao Pavilion, so he only covered half of his veil, and only put it down completely at this time. Rong Yu held Nan 11's hand and walked with her to the bridal chamber. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 144. The new house is filled with light and bright red candles. Entering the inner hall, several maids spoke happy words and scattered peanuts, longans, chestnuts, red dates, and lotus seeds into the tent. Along with a burst of beautiful meanings, 5-color flowers and fruits rolled to every corner of the wedding bed. After setting up the bed, the hostess invited the prince and princess to sit on the edge of the bed. She held the ruyi scale on the purple jade plate. Rong Yu reached out to take it, gently lifted the hijab on Nan 11's head, and put the ruyi scale back on the plate. The female officer looked at the new princess and couldn't help but be amazed. The bride was stunningly beautiful, with red makeup and pink and black makeup that didn't hide her pure face. She was calm and quiet, elegant and clean, and extremely bright. Looking at his regent again, he has an indifferent majesty, a handsome and noble face, and the pressure he exudes from his body makes people feel a sense of surrender and awe at all times. However, at this time, he is dressed in wedding clothes that make his body tall and thin. Under the light of the lights, there was also a rare sense of joy and tenderness. They are truly a match made in heaven. The female officer in charge of the ceremony held the gold plate in her hands and knelt down to bring the hexen wine to her side. Rong Yu took the pair of jade ruyi cups and handed them to Nan 11, and then he picked up the other one. Nan 11 took it with a smile, her eyes filled with tenderness, and the smile on her lips was moved, sighing, and unspeakable guilt and heartache from past and present lives. The exchange of glasses of wine means that I am with you, and you are with me. It is a companionship that will never leave us in this life, and an oath to share the joys and sorrows in this life. The sweet wine touches your lips, enters your throat, and goes straight into your heart. Rongyu stared silently and lustfully at the girl's bright face under the red candle, clearly feeling the joy in her heart from the smile holding her eyes, and the unstoppable vibration and softness in her heart. The female officer in charge knelt down and respectfully invited the two of them to tie their hair. After receiving permission, she took a lock of hair from Rongyu and Nan 11 and tied it into a wishful knot. Congratulations to the prince and princess on their happy marriage. May they be together for 100 years. Yunyu and other maids smiled and sent blessings. Congratulations to the prince and princess. Even Yin Chuang, who had always been cold and taciturn, had a faint smile on his face. He lowered his head and said, "Congratulations, prince and princess." Nan 11 accepted everyone's blessings with a smile. Rongyu was also happy and said lightly, "Everyone's reward will be doubled today." The maids were delighted and thanked him one after another. Qingyang poked his head in from the outside. "Congratulations to the prince and princess. But there are already people outside urging you. Would you like to come over earlier?" Rongyu frowned slightly. "Don't frown on your big day." Nan 11 stretched out her hand to smooth his brow and said softly, "The emperor and several other princes are here today. There are many guests outside, so we must go out to deal with them early. Just come back." Rongyu was unhappy and didn't want to leave this place. He even wanted to have the emperor and those clan members driven out immediately. However, on the big day, such behavior was obviously inappropriate, so after a moment of silence, he said lightly, "Take care of me well." The female officer and the maids naturally saw that the prince cared about the princess. Who dared to neglect her? They all responded respectfully. With Yin Yu and Yin Chuang in the inner hall, Rongyu felt more at ease. However, after looking at Nan 11 for a moment, he was still reluctant to give up. It was not until Nan 11 urged him again that he nodded. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, his eyes suddenly fell on the phoenix crown Nan 11 was wearing. Rongyu raised his hand to take it off. "This is too heavy. Take it off first to let your neck rest for a while." The female officer was surprised and subconsciously said, "Your Majesty, this is against the rules." "It's the rule that my prince feels sorry for the princess." Yin Yu spoke quickly and winked at her. "There are a large group of guests waiting outside. I don't know when the prince will come back. The princess will definitely have a sore neck with such a heavy phoenix crown." When the female officer heard this, she knew that these maids in the Prince Regent's palace were used to the prince's attitude towards Miss Nan, so she felt blessed and said nothing more. Rongyu said softly, "I'll be back early. If you're hungry, just eat something to fill your stomach." Nan 11 nodded lightly, "Drink less." Rongyu hummed, turned around and walked out. "Oh, the prince is so considerate of the princess." Yunyu sighed with a smile and joked bitterly, "I am so envious of you." Nan 11's pretty face turned red. "If you keep talking nonsense, I will let Rongyu punish you." Yunyu stuck out her tongue, playfully. After the ceremony in the inner hall, the female official resigned, and soon only Yunyu and Yin Chuang were left, as well as 6 maids from the regent's palace waiting in the outer hall. Yunyu said, "Is the princess hungry?" Nan 11 shook her head, "It's okay." "Are you thirsty?" Nan 11 shook her head. After sitting in the sedan for a long time, it was true that her body was a little tired. It was hypocritical. People who carried the sedan for a whole day were not tired, but she, who was sitting in the sedan, was a little tired. Regardless of whether she was thirsty or not, Yunyu still poured a cup of tea and handed it to her. "If princess is bored, I will chat with you." Nan 11 took the teacup and took a sip, unable to hide her smile from the corners of her eyes and brows. "What did you say? Is the princess happy?" Yunyu looked at Nan 11's brows and said, "You can tell she is happy at first sight. The princess's smile is almost overflowing." Nan 11 glanced at her. "Being able to marry the regent Rongyu is the dream of many women in the entire Zhou dynasty. Of course I am happy." Silver Moon was silent for a moment. Although this is true, Nan 11 was not included among these women. She and Gu Qingshu had a relationship for 4 years. They were forcibly brought into the palace by his prince. I heard that there was a quarrel for more than a month. Although I don't know why they suddenly changed their attitude, it was definitely not because of the prince's power. To the princess regent, a maid outside the palace held a brocade box in her hand and asked respectfully. The queen ordered her servants to bring a congratulatory gift to the princess. A congratulatory gift from the queen? Yin Yu was suspicious and winked at Yin Shuang. Yin Shuang turned around and walked out without saying a word, stretched out her hand and said, "Give it to me." The palace maid lowered her head and replied, "The queen has told me that it must be handed over to the princess regent." Yin Shuang's expression suddenly turned cold. "Since the empress wants to hand it over to me personally, come in." Nan 11 stayed in the inner hall and seemed to be indifferent to the words of the palace maid. She raised her lips carelessly. "The empress specially sent a gift. I should thank her." "Yes." The palace maid walked in with lowered eyebrows and lowered eyes. Just as he was about to enter the inner hall, he suddenly raised his hand and smashed the brocade box in the direction of Yin Huang. Yin Huang raised his hand and waved, and the brocade box was split into 2 halves with a strong force. The powder in the brocade box splashed everywhere, and a strange fragrance floated inside. In front of the palace, Yin Huang had a stern expression and said sternly, "Hold your breath." As soon as she finished speaking, she fainted. Yin Huang, Yin Yu's face changed suddenly, and she directly attacked the palace maid. However, before the wind from her palm could be swept away, she fell to the ground with a bang. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 145. The maids in the palace fainted in an instant. The maid who succeeded turned around and walked to the back window, opened the window, looked at the man outside the window, and quickly lowered her head and left. The man in a green robe was Gu Qingshu. He jumped in from the open carved window, raised his hand and covered his mouth and nose with a slightly wet handkerchief, ignored the maid who fainted on the ground, and slowly walked towards the inner hall. The girl in a gorgeous and bright wedding dress fainted on the wedding bed. Her beautiful face, exquisite figure, and happy smile between her eyebrows that had not faded in time made Gu Qingshu feel dazzling. There were waves of gloomy and strange light in his eyes. He clenched his hands, thinking about all the misfortunes and experiences he had encountered in these days, and couldn't help but feel a surge of hatred in his heart. If it weren't for Nan 11, he wouldn't be in this situation now. Nan Yu was pregnant with his child, but when she came to the regent's mansion to visit her sister Nan 11 that day, she was kicked by the regent because she stabbed Nan 11, and the child was gone. This was revenge for killing his son. Afterwards, he repeatedly asked Nan Yu that it was Nan 11 who scratched her arm with a dagger, and the purpose was to frame Nan Yu. Although Gu Qingshu couldn't figure out why Nan 11 suddenly changed her mind and became so scheming, Nan Yu was sure that she was framed and paid a huge price for it. The regent was so blind that he didn't see that Nan Yu was innocent. He only believed in this vicious woman in front of him and wanted to marry her as a concubine. Why? From that day on, Nan 11's attitude towards him changed rapidly, as if all her feelings disappeared overnight. In Gu Qingshu's view, Nan 11 was a woman who was greedy for wealth and glory, vain, and fickle. The wedding ceremony today was the best proof. In order to marry the regent smoothly, she deliberately created such a vicious plot to frame her sister, so that Nan Yu had no chance to enter the prime minister's mansion to recognize her ancestors, and even sent Nan Yu to a brothel, making her suffer the most painful and tragic experience in the world. She fell in love with someone else, was unfaithful, killed her son, and framed her sister. It was extremely vicious. Gu Qingshu deliberately looked for an opportunity to meet Nan 11 at the birthday banquet of Princess Bailing, but was beaten up and seriously injured. Although no one saw who did it, and no one dared to suspect the regent, Gu Qingshu knew in his heart that no one except the regent Rong Yu could order someone to beat him in the princess's mansion. That serious injury made him lie in the mansion for several days before waking up, and he also remembered this grudge. Nan Yu was Gu Qingshu's woman. She had slept with him and had his child. She was undoubtedly his woman, but in the end she was sent to a brothel because she offended Nan 11. Gu Qingshu didn't even have the ability to protect his woman. As for the other rumors that were spread because of the cancellation of the engagement, and the damage to his reputation, they were all new and old hatreds. Any man would not be able to let go of such humiliation. In addition to recuperating in the mansion, in order to silence the rumors outside, Gu Qingshu did not leave the mansion for more than half a month until he heard that the marriage between the regent and Nan 11 had been settled on April 18. Suddenly, new and old hatred surged in his heart. At this time, looking at the girl sleeping on the wedding bed, his eyes were filled with deep hatred, and at the same time, a crazy desire to possess and destroy emerged. Since he couldn't get it, he might as well destroy it. Anyway, his career was gone, and it was ruined by this vain and fickle woman. With the regent around, he would never be able to make a breakthrough in his life. In this case, Gu Qingshu's expression became more and more cold, and he reached out to Nan 11, but before his hand touched Nan 11, the girl who had fainted on the bed suddenly raised her wrist. A silver light flashed before my eyes. Gu Qingshu suddenly realized the danger and wanted to dodge, but it was too late. He felt a sharp pain in his heart. He looked at Nan 11, who sat up from the bed in disbelief. "Are you okay? Do you think I should be in trouble?" Nan 11 smiled lightly, but her smile was completely different from the coldness and mockery she showed when she faced Rong Yu just now. The regent's palace is so heavily guarded. Today is the wedding day. Rong Yu has strengthened his precautions to prevent accidents. You can get in so easily. I guess it must be because someone in the palace is working with you, right? I really want to know who this person is. Gu Qingshu's face was gloomy. "Are you kidding me? Ticking you? Gu Qingshu, why didn't I know you were so stupid and ridiculous before?" Nan 11's expression was indifferent. "Did I tip you off, or did I ask someone to pass the message to you? Could it be that I asked you to come to the regent's palace to die today?" Gu Qingshu's face turned pale, and he covered his aching heart with his hand. He stared at the leisurely looking girl with resentment, and he had already guessed that he had been tricked. He was injured now. Even if Nan 11 was a weak woman, he had no chance to do anything to her. Besides, as long as she opened her mouth and shouted, someone would come in soon. So he had to leave. Thinking this in his heart, he took 2 steps back and was about to escape, but he froze as soon as he turned around. Yin Yu and Yin Shuang both stood not far away, looking at him expressionlessly. Gu Qingshu's face turned pale, and fear could not help but appear in his eyes. These two were the female guards around Nan 11 who were difficult to deal with. Gu Qingshu knew they were powerful, so he thought of drugging them first, but he didn't expect that the drug had no effect on them at all. "It's strange that Mixiang is useless to us," Yunyu sneered. "You don't even look at the training that my aunt has received since she was a child. You want to charm us with this little Mixiang? You are simply too arrogant." Yin Shuang's words were concise and to the point. "Please tell me how to deal with him, princess." "It's very simple." Nan 11 leaned on the bedside and said in a calm tone, "Use your hands and feet and throw it out of the window." "Yes." Gu Qingshu's expression suddenly changed. He suddenly turned to look at her, and said in disbelief, "Nan 11, I haven't seen you for just a few days, but you have become so vicious." "Am I evil?" Nan 11 smiled lightly and raised her eyebrows in a sarcastic arc. "On my wedding day, you, a man, sneaked into my new house. What do you want to do?" "If I guessed correctly, someone should have gone there by now. Is there a tip from the front hall? I guess that person will tell the Prince Regent in front of all the guests that his princess is hooking up with her old lover in the new house to renew their relationship, and then the Prince Regent will be there on the wedding day." If you and I are both in disgrace, my reputation will be in jeopardy. If it's serious, the regent might kill me on the spot, Nan 11 said in a leisurely manner, and then she concluded, I wonder if this plan is evil or not. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 146. Like an immortal with great scheming, as soon as these words were finished, there was indeed a burst of messy footsteps outside. The speed is really not slow. A strange light suddenly appeared on Gu Qingshu's pale face, and the gloomy and angry look on his face faded away. He looked at Nan 11 with hurt eyes and screamed sadly, I always thought you were sincere to me, but I didn't expect dash. Bang. Before he finished speaking, Yunyu, who had quick eyes and quick hands, picked up the scabbard and hit it on the back of the head. How could the weak scholar Gu Qingshu withstand Yunyu's strength? The scabbard was slammed down, and his head suddenly felt a sharp pain. It seemed that the smell of rusty blood could be smelled in the air. However, he could no longer react. His vision went black, and his body fell forward with a bang. Nan 11 looked at Gu Qingshu, who fell on the ground in silence. Thinking of his sinister reaction just now, I felt more and more that I was so stupid that I was blinded by lard in my previous life, and my eyes were so blind. How could I fall in love with such a person? Did he come tonight with the attitude that he will die? Yunyu frowned, want to die together with the princess. She didn't miss his reaction just now, which was deliberately trying to make a scene. Is this the number one scholar that the princess liked before? It's so narrow-minded, selfish, and so vicious that it makes people and gods angry. Fortunately, the princess left him in time, otherwise the rest of her life would be ruined in the hands of such a person. Someone should promise to protect him. Otherwise, knowing that he will definitely die, you still dare to do such a stupid move, Yin Shuang said coldly, but no matter how powerful the person behind him is, he is destined to be unable to protect him this time. Nan 11 recovered from the silence, raised her head, and looked at Yin Shuang curiously. It's rare to hear Yin Shuang say such a long thing tonight. Although there were only 2 or 3 sentences, it was the first time that Yin Shuang had spoken such a long paragraph since she had been with Nan 11 for so long. The corner of Yin Yu's mouth twitched slightly, and she looked at her speechlessly. How long has it been? Princess actually still cares about Yin Shuang's talk. What are you afraid of? Nan 11 raised her hand to straighten her hair and said calmly, anyway, your prince will handle it properly. Yunyu was silent for a moment, then looked at Gu Qingshu, who was unconscious on the ground, with disgusted eyes like looking at a bedbug. What should he do? Nan 11 said, there should be someone on duty outside the palace. It's not very safe outside the window, so just stuff it under the bed first. Stuff it under the bed? Both Yin Yu and Yin Shuang looked at her in surprise. The footsteps outside are getting closer. Nan 11 made a quick decision, stop. Yin Yu nodded and cooperated with Yin Shuang. Yin Yu moved neatly and dragged Gu Qing's book stuffing under the bed. Yin Huang walked to the outer hall, took out a bottle of gas antidote, and put it under the noses of several maids one by one. Maybe the antidote was very irritating and very harmful. After almost hearing the sound of sneezing one after another, Yin Shuang said coldly, everyone is standing still. The maids had just woken up. They were still a little dazed, as if they were asleep. When they heard Yin Shuang's cold voice, they suddenly got excited and hurriedly got up from the ground to stand up. They stretched out their hands to straighten their clothes. He looked confused, but he only dared to lower his head. I don't want everyone to laugh at my uncle's wedding day, but there are no secrets in royal affairs. The more we hide it, the more suspicious they will become. At the foot of the jade steps outside Zhaochen Hall, Rong Chuiyun stopped and looked at Rong Yu, who had a tall figure and a cold face. Uncle Emperor, do you think I am right? Rong Yu's expression was as cold as ice, followed by a guard of the Prince Regent's palace who lowered his head. A moment ago, this guard hurried to the wedding banquet in the front hall to report that he saw a man who looked like Gu Zhuangyu and secretly sneaked into Zhaochen Hall and entered the princess's bridal chamber. His voice was loud and sounded urgent. After the words fell, the whole hall suddenly fell into dead silence. When something like this happened on the big day, it was undoubtedly a thunderbolt that struck the sky. All the royal family members present were stunned and could hardly believe what they heard. On her wedding day, the regent princess secretly dated her old lover in her new house in the inner palace. The news was so exciting that it made them want to run away. If this kind of thing happened to other people, they might still be able to watch the excitement. But isn't the regent's bustle so good to watch? Rather than watching the fun, they were more afraid that they would see something they shouldn't see today, learn some secrets they shouldn't know, and be silenced by the regent one day. But why didn't the emperor notice the fear in their hearts? He immediately turned down his face and said, if a woman who marries into the royal family does not observe the rules of womanhood and does something that brings shame to the royal family, she must not be leniently spared. So now they appear here. It was not that they wanted to come, but they had to come, because even though the regent's face was very cold, the emperor insisted on the dignity of the royal family and said that he would not tolerate any scandalous things happening under his nose, nor would he tolerate anything shameful. Secret. So the regent said coldly, Qing Yang. Order the guards to lead the guards to guard the regent's palace and not allow anyone to leave early. Yes, Qing Yang took the order and left. Rong Yu turned his eyes slightly, without even looking at Rong Chuiyun. His voice was as cold as ice, I will give you an explanation. Who says the royal family has no secrets? There are so many royal secrets that people are afraid to dig out, okay. If this is true, not only will the regent be wearing a green hat, but the regent princess must also be executed, and she must be dealt with according to the royal family's rules for dealing with concubines who cause trouble in the palace. They dare not even think about what the regent will do in anger after seeing his princess secretly meeting her lover on the first day of his wedding. Everyone was terrified, feeling excited and terrified at the same time. They were afraid of seeing the scene they didn't want to see, but they were also eager to try. It was this dilemma that directly caused their legs to tremble when they walked to the steps of the palace. They wanted to turn around and leave immediately, pretending that they didn't know anything. Just when everyone was about to be driven crazy by the silence, a maid walked out of the palace. She looked up and saw so many people standing on the steps of the palace. She was shocked. Prince? Emperor? Rong Yu raised his eyes and looked at Yin Yu, who came out expressionlessly. His noble and handsome face was indifferent and cold, and his eyebrows and eyes were shrouded in a cold atmosphere. The emperor and the clan members also saw Yin Yu, and they clearly saw that the maid came out of the inner hall. So the regent princess didn't need to avoid the maids of the regent palace when she met her lover in private? Are you and the princes going to make trouble in the bridal chamber? Yin Yu was a little stunned. Your servant. Rong Yu said calmly, Princess, are you okay? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 147. Princess, Yin Yu nodded subconsciously, with nothing strange on her face. Very good, but the princess is a little hungry. This servant is going to the kitchen to get some hot food to fill the princess's stomach. Huh? Everyone standing outside the hall was stunned. Can the bride eat as she pleases before the groom enters the bridal chamber? Are there no pastries in the new house? But this is not important. What is important is that Yin Yu said that the princess was very good and looked as normal. She did not look like someone in the palace was having a private meeting. The clan disciples couldn't tell whether they were more disappointed or relieved, but at least their legs were no longer shaking and their heartbeats were not so fast. They glanced at Rong Yu quietly, only to see Rong Yu raising his feet to go up the steps of the palace. Go. His Majesty the Emperor's lips tightened, his expression dark and unpredictable, a cold light flashed across his eyes, and he silently walked towards Zhao Chen Hall step by step. After entering the inner hall, his eyes caught sight of the 6 maids who were respectfully serving in the outer hall. Rong Chuiun's eyes were delicate and he couldn't help but pause. When the maids saw the Prince Regent and His Majesty the Emperor, they all knelt down and saluted, with their foreheads on the ground. The clan members looked at each other in confusion. With all the maids in the palace here, who dares to suspect that the princess has done something inappropriate in the inner palace? No one would be stupid enough to cuckold his husband in his palace in front of so many pairs of eyes, right? Yin's Huang. At this moment, a girl's delicate and soft voice sounded from the inner hall. You have been so cold all day, aren't you worried that you won't be able to find a lover in the future? Yin Shuang's tone was cold. I will protect the princess my whole life and have no plans to get married. How can a woman not marry? Nan 11 disagreed. I will definitely find you a gentle and considerate husband in the future. This slave is a secret guard and cannot get married, Yin Shuang said. There are not many reliable men in this world, and Yin Shuang doesn't want to be attached to a weak man. The expressions of the helpless men outside the palace changed slightly. These days, can even the guards dislike them? A helpless dog man? This female guard is so brave, but... Rong Yu walked towards the inner hall. When Yin Shuang saw Rong Yu coming in, she saluted respectfully, Your Majesty. Rong Yu, Nan 11 looked at him in surprise, aren't you in front to greet the guests? Why are you back so soon? Rong Chuiyun stood outside, quietly clenching his hands. Rong Yu said in a calm tone, I am afraid that you will be bored by being alone, so come and take a look. Boring, Nan 11 said with a smile, fortunately, with Yin Yu and Yin Shuang accompanying me, it's not boring. Rong Yu said calmly, did anyone come here just now? Huh, Nan 11 was puzzled, no, just Yin Yu and Yin Shuang are here, who are you asking about? Rong Yu shook his head, no one. Yin Huang said, this slave has never left the princess since she entered the new house. I will not let anyone come and disturb the princess. Rong Yu hummed, turned around and walked out. Young members of the royal family have the habit of having a wedding party on their wedding day. Rong Yu is similar in age to them. These princes are of lower seniority, so it would not be against the rules to have a wedding party. But today's scene, even if he is already standing outside the door of the new house, it is unacceptable. People dare to stay and make fun. They could clearly hear the conversation between Nan 11 and Yin Shuang in the inner palace, and they could also see the 6 maids standing in the outer palace. Under such circumstances, there must be a secret meeting with their lover to be a ghost. It was obvious that someone was deliberately trying to create a little something else on this happy day tonight. Rong Yu came out, and his cold and stern eyes fell on the guard who had tipped off the news. The guard was so frightened that he knelt down on the spot. My subordinate, I deserve to die. This is not what I meant. Spreading rumors and causing trouble will be punished. Rong Chuiyun turned around with his hands behind his back and said coldly and angrily, come here. Pull him out. Your Majesty, have mercy on me. Your Majesty, have mercy on me. I don't know anything about my humble position. Your Majesty, please have mercy on me. He is a member of the Prince Regent's palace. Even if he needs to be dealt with, it will be handled by me, without the Emperor having to worry about it. Rong Yu said indifferently, raising his hand to signal to the palace guards who had already swarmed over, remove his chin and take him down. Yes. There was a false alarm, but before Rong Yu could say anything, the clan princes and princes' children all started to excuse themselves. Before leaving, Rong Chuiun glanced in the direction of the inner palace inadvertently, with a gloomy luster in his eyes, and said calmly, "I won't disturb the emperor's wedding night." Rong Yu had a cold aura around him, and turned around and returned to the inner hall without looking back. Yunyu walked in with a plate of meat-filled wontons and happened to catch a glimpse of the emperor leaving. She stood in a dark corner and waited until the emperor had gone far before climbing up the steps and quickly entered the palace. After closing the palace door, he walked to the inner palace and saw that Gu Qingshu had been dragged out from under the bed. Nan 11 stood aside, looked at the person on the ground, and kicked him. "Is he dead?" Yunyu hurriedly put down the tray and replied, "You should still have some energy, I only have some energy left." Rong Yu remained silent. "I'm hiding a man under the bed. Your Majesty won't suspect that I'm unfaithful, right?" Nan 11 turned to look at Rong Yu and said with a smile, "Is your Majesty the one who brought someone here to catch the adulterer?" Rong Yu looked at her with deep eyes and said nothing. "Is he really a traitor?" Nan 11 suppressed her smile and her expression softened. "In this situation, what do you think the prince should do? How about letting me sink into the pond with him?" "Don't talk nonsense." Rong Yu tightened his thin lips and stretched out his hands to take her into his arms. "I am not angry with you." He was just angry at Gu Qingshu for seeking death. Nan Yu had used the same trick once before, but Gu Qingshu actually dared to use it tonight. It was unforgivable that such dirty and dark thoughts were used on her again and again. "Your Majesty, what should we do with this person?" Yunyu asked respectfully, explaining briefly. Just now the princess said she wanted to throw her hands and feet out, but she was worried that the emperor had arranged manpower to monitor him outside the window, so she did it out of desperation. "Under the bed." Rong Yu's voice was cold. "Do as the princess says." Yunyu nodded, "Yes." "Cripple his hands and feet and put him in a dungeon." Rong Yu's voice was ruthless. "I will deal with him tomorrow." "Yes." Yunyu and Yin's Huang quickly dragged the people away so as not to disturb the wedding night of their prince and princess. "I didn't doubt you." Rong Yu lowered his eyes at the charming little girl in his arms and explained patiently, "I can guess who is behind the plot tonight." The commotion has become louder. There are many people ahead. People have heard things they shouldn't have heard, and if they are not allowed to come and see for themselves, it will hide the truth. Even if they dare not say it, they will definitely have doubts in their hearts. He didn't want her reputation to be damaged in the slightest, especially on matters of chastity. As soon as Rong Yu entered the hall, he smelled the fragrance in the air that had not completely faded away. How could he not know what was going on? If it weren't for the purpose of proving her innocence, the emperor's words would just be regarded as farts. The author has something to say. The bridal chamber tomorrow. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 148. Nan 11 raised her head, stood on tiptoes, smiled, and kissed the corner of his lips. "I was teasing you." Rong Yu's eyes were dark and hot, and he stared silently at the girl's bright face. He suddenly picked her up, walked to the bed, laid the girl flat on the bed, and pressed her body on her. The bright red gauze curtain slowly drooped, layer upon layer, reflecting the two affectionate figures in the tent. The temperature in the air is rising steadily, the atmosphere is beautiful, and the spring is endless. Report to the prince. Qin Jiang's respectful report suddenly sounded outside. My subordinates blocked all the exits of the palace, but the emperor said he wanted to go back to the palace, and other guests also left one after another. I can't stop them anymore. The beauty in the tent disappeared without a trace in an instant. Their eyes met, and a cold light flashed across Rong Yu's eyes, but Nan 11 blinked at him. "Go and have a look first, and let the guests come back. I'll wait for you here." A trace of annoyance flashed across Rong Yu's eyes, and she pursed her thin lips slightly. She stood up and walked out without saying a word, adjusting her half-unbuttoned robe as she walked. When he walked out of the palace gate, he had already returned to his usual indifferent and dignified appearance. Your Majesty. Qingyang raised his head and looked at Rong Yu, vaguely feeling that the prince's face seemed a little dark. He was confused, but he still reported responsibly, "My subordinates have arranged for guards to guard the major exits. Master wants to investigate them one by one. Or let them go first. Master, please give me some instructions." Rong Yu glanced at him emotionlessly and said calmly, "Where is Commander Wei?" "He was keeping order in the front yard." "Yins Huang, you and Qingyang go there together," Rong Yu ordered coldly. "Find the palace maid who sent the gift, remove her chin together with the guard commander, and take her into the dungeon." Qingyang was surprised. "Commander of the guard?" Rong Yu's eyes were cold. "Is there a problem?" "No." Qingyang knows the current affairs and is a hero. He quickly bowed his head and agreed, not daring to ask any more questions. "I obey my orders." Although he didn't know what Commander Wei had done, since the prince wanted to take him down, there must be a reason to take him down. Yins Huang followed and left. Rong Yu turned his head and glanced at Yunyu and several other maids who were guarding outside, and said indifferently, "Don't let anyone in again." Yunyu bent her knees and responded, "Yes." She knows that a moment of spring is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. "We must not let irrelevant people disturb the bridal night of the prince and princess again." Rong Yu turned around and stepped into the palace door. Yin Yu directed the maid to close the door and stood guard outside like a door god. Yingni was interrupted by Qingyang. At this time, Rong Yu had regained some composure. When he entered the inner hall and saw Nan 11 sitting on the edge of the bed, his eyebrows softened and he walked over and kissed her forehead. "After a hard day, I'm tired. Come on, let's take a hot bath first." "It's okay." Nan 11 smiled sweetly and stretched out her arms towards him with a smile. "Husband, please give me a hug." Rong Yu's heart palpitated, and his brows softened instantly. Husband. He finally became her husband in name only, and the girl finally became his wife. She will be his only wife in this life, the next life, and all eternity. Rong Yu reached out to remove the complicated wedding dress from her body, picked her up gently, turned around and walked towards the apse bath. He undressed her with his own hands, spread her hair, and carried her out of the bath. There are petals floating on the water, which is the beautiful mandarin duck bath specially prepared by the maid in the palace for tonight's wedding night. The hot water warms the body and drives away fatigue. The slender and beautiful girl was surrounded by clusters of petals, and her brows and eyes were filled with heat. She was like a fairy immersed in a fairyland in the clouds. She was so beautiful that she was holy, noble and clean, which made people worry that she had desecrated this beauty. Rong Yu stood by the bathtub and took off his robe and white inner clothes. He walked down and walked up to the girl. He took her hand and put it to his lips to kiss her. The girl's waterfall-like black hair was scattered on her back and shoulders, soaked in the water, and her pair of dark eyes stared at him with joy and shyness. Hot mist curls over the water, and the floating petals exude fresh fragrance. The atmosphere is lovely and charming. Rong Yu couldn't help but feel a little emotional. He suppressed the hot throbbing in his heart. He treated her like the most priceless treasure in the world and carefully poured water for her to cleanse herself. There are ripples on the water, petals are floating, and fragrance is flowing. Nan 11 looked at Rong Yu, leaned over and kissed the corner of his lips. "Rong Yu, I like you." Rong Yu's heart trembled slightly and he hugged her tightly unconsciously. "In this life, you are my only husband, the only person I love," the girl confided in a low voice, her red lips overflowing with tenderness. "You should be like a rock, and my concubine should be like a willow. The willow is as tough as silk, and the rock will not shift." Rong Yu hugged her whole body into his arms, and pursed his thin lips slightly. He enjoyed the charming and warm atmosphere at this moment more than the skin-to-skin contact. Joy drives away all the indifference, leaving only the bone-crushing tenderness lingering in the brows and eyes. After the tea time, after bathing, Rong Yu stood up and walked out of the bath with his beloved woman in his arms, dried his body and hair, and put a thin and soft nightgown on her. Nan 11 was held in his arms and nestled in his warm and solid arms, her cheeks blushing quietly, thinking about what was about to happen. She was nervous and yet couldn't help but look forward to it. Enter the bedroom. The red candle shines high, and the mandarin ducks cross their necks. In the vast night sky, a bright light flashed across, and a dazzling and beautiful sea of flowers exploded in the sky. The maids exclaimed with joy, "What a beautiful fireworks!" In the bedroom with the red curtains fluttering, the beauty's black hair spread out on the brocade mandarin duck pillow, her thin lips fell on her ears, lingered on her snow-white neck, and a low and tender voice sounded, "My wife." The soft smell of mellow wine lingered. Nan 11 closed her eyes slightly, her delicate body was tightly surrounded by his breath, airtight, and gradually fell under his domineering but gentle offensive, intoxicating and misty. The dragon and phoenix wedding candles burned all night. The inner hall was full of light, the red gauze curtains swayed layer by layer, and the hazy candlelight reflected the overlapping figures in the curtains. The spring breeze in the hall was infinite, intoxicating. Qingyang flew over from outside the palace and was about to report to the window, but Yunyu, who rushed to his side, covered his mouth and glared at him fiercely, lowering her voice and saying, "Tonight is the wedding night of the prince and the princess, don't spoil the mood." Qingyang stopped eating, but still couldn't help but say, "But I have something urgent to report to the master." "What is the urgent matter?" "The maid the master is looking for is dead." Qingyang frowned, "She died of poisoning, so now there is no evidence." Yunyu frowned, "Dead?" Qingyang nodded. "If she's dead, she's dead, what's the big deal?" Yunyu said quickly, staring at Qingyang with a warning, "I'm letting you go now, you'd better not shout, if you disturb the prince's good things, you will be exiled to the border tomorrow." Author has something to say. There will be another update during the day. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 149. Qingyang realized later, and even said in a dull tone, "Is the night of flowers and candles in the wedding room more important than the death of the palace maid?" "Nonsense," Yunyu said angrily, "are you a pig? A palace maid is nothing, is it worth the prince's trouble?" Qingyang was frightened by what she just said about being sent to the frontier. Although he didn't agree with it, he still dragged Yao to the big tree in the distance with scruples. He unconsciously lowered his voice, "Of course that palace lady doesn't, it's nothing, but she was plotting something evil tonight, intending to frame the princess." This was a serious crime that could be punished by Ling Qi, but there was no reason for a little palace maid to frame the princess. She must have been instigated by someone behind her, but now the palace maid is dead, there is no evidence, and the prince will definitely conduct a strict investigation tomorrow morning. But what should I do if the clues are cut off from this palace lady? Who said the clues were all cut off from the palace maid? Yunyu frowned and looked at him as if he were an idiot. "I really doubt why the prince chose you as his personal guard in the first place. How can a pig like you survive to this day? Being slapped to death by the prince is all because of the prince's mercy." "Qingyang, do you want to be so cruel? How in the world does he look like a pig? Isn't what he said true? The palace maid was dead, and she was killed and silenced. The reason must be to interrupt the clues so that the prince could not find the person behind it. Who said that the clues are lost when the palace maid dies?" Yunyu stared at the direction of the palace door and said in a calm tone, "Didn't the prince give you an order to capture the commander of the guard?" Qingyang nodded and reacted slowly, "Is Commander Wei the mastermind behind this?" "How do I know?" Yunyu curled her lips, "The prince should be well aware of this matter, so you don't need to worry about it. But as the prince's personal bodyguard, failing to carry out the prince's order is a dereliction of duty in itself. If you dare to interrupt the prince's wedding tonight, You will not be derelict in your duty. Yunyu snorted coldly. Whether you can save your head tomorrow morning is what you should think about. Qin Jiang's expression changed. Well, the prince and Miss Nan have finally achieved success. Of course, the wedding night is more important. As for other things, anyway, the palace maid is dead. Commander Wei and Gu Qingshu have been taken to the dungeon to wait for the prince to leave tomorrow. It's not too late to take action and start interrogation. Qingyang thought about it and couldn't help but want to gossip with Yunyu again. Who do you think did this tonight? Do you still need to ask this question? Yunyu didn't bother to use her brain to guess. Who else besides the emperor could come up with such a stupid and clumsy plan? Although the maid said that she was sent a gift on the order of the queen to the princess, but I don't think the queen is that stupid. Of course, she wasn't that smart to begin with, but if she was so stupid and framed the princess on the grounds of the regent's palace, she would probably have done her best as a queen. Qingyang thought it made sense and couldn't help but nod. It makes sense. Yunyu said no more. In the Prince Regent's palace, in addition to the commander of the guards, who is the official commander of the guards, there is also a secret commander who is responsible for the defense of the palace, so even if the commander of the guards is arrested, it will not have an impact on the guard of the palace tonight. The guests left one after another. Some were shocked, some were confused, and some were secretly angry. But undoubtedly, it would not affect the happy life of the newlyweds at all. However, considering that it was Nan 11's first time, Rong Yu restrained himself and did not dare to indulge too much. After the intense lovemaking, Yin Yu, who heard the summons, took the maid into the inner hall and replaced all the sheets and bedding with new ones. Rong Yu hugged his newlywed wife and went to take a bath again to cleanse herself. The hot water relieved the body's aches and pains, making it simple and clean. Behind him, Nan 11 was held on the clean and soft bed with her eyes half open. "What time is it?" Nan 11 said, her voice slightly hoarse and lazy. Rong Yu lay beside her and said softly, "It has just passed." Nan 11 snorted, feeling a little drowsy. "Are you feeling sleepy?" Rong Yu's breath lingered on his nose, and a charming atmosphere filled the air. "Are you feeling unwell?" Nan 11 was ashamed to face this problem. Although it hurt a little, it was actually okay. Moreover, she was indeed a little sleepy at this time, so she hummed in a daze, closed her eyes like an ostrich to escape, and fell into a deep sleep after a while. Rong Yu stared at the girl's features, his eyes full of pampering and tenderness. If Nan 11 opened her eyes and looked at her at this moment, she would probably drown in them. This is his girl, his princess, his beloved wife. Rong Yu stretched out his hand to wrap her in his arms, lowered his head and placed a kiss as thin as cicada's wings at the tip of her eyes, filled with cherishment and love. When Nan 11 woke up early the next morning, the sun was already shining brightly outside. The soreness in her body was awakened. She frowned slightly and let out a low groan in her throat. She lay quietly for a while before trying to move her body. "It hurts," Rong Yu's tense voice sounded in her ears. Nan 11 opened her eyes and saw a look of pain and guilt on his face. She raised her lips and said, "Every woman has to go through this. It's okay." Rong Yu said nothing and quietly massaged her thighs. Nan 11 stopped him. "Are you going to the palace today?" "What are you doing in the palace?" "I want to serve tea." Nan 11 sat up slowly, feeling that the pain was not that unbearable. "Aren't you going to serve tea to the Queen Mother?" It is a rule for a woman to serve tea to her parents-in-law the day after she marries into her husband's family. Rong Yu's father, mother, and concubine have passed away many years ago, but there is still a Queen Mother in the palace who is Rong Yu's sister-in-law. Whether it is according to royal etiquette or eldest daughter-in-law according to the rule of sister-in-law is like mother, it seems that they should all go to the palace to serve tea. "No need," Rong Yu said calmly, "rest well in the mansion today, don't go anywhere." Nan 11 pondered for a moment. How is the situation in the Prime Minister's mansion recently? She had been away from the imperial capital for more than 10 days, and had no idea what the Prime Minister's mansion was like after her mother divorced her father. But it is estimated that life will not be too easy. On April 6, the waiter of Fenyang restaurant went to settle the bill. The money your father had used to treat his colleagues to dinner at Fenyang restaurant had not been settled. On April 7, the Sen embroidery shop went to collect the bill. Li and Nanjiao had ordered several sets of clothes from their embroidery shop and had not paid the money. On April 9, the tea house went to collect the bill. On April 12, Aunt Li went to the silver shop and saw a pair of earrings. She wanted to buy them on credit, but the silver shop did not agree. The two sides had a dispute. Aunt Li was ridiculed by several ladies who visited the silver shop and fled. The indifferent and taciturn regent prince rarely turned into a know-it-all, and recounted everything that had happened in the Prime Minister's mansion in recent days, which made Nan 11 stunned. "This is so miserable. Father's life is, tisk tisk." Nan 11 sighed with a faint smile. "Sure enough, without my mother, he is nothing." "Wrong, you didn't say anything." Nan 11's eyes fell on his face. "Husband, this is the first time I hear you speak so long, and it's so, well, completely different from your usual self. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered." Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 150. Wrong, you smiled. "Do you want to sleep a little longer? I'll let Yin Yu come in to accompany you." "What about you?" "Some things haven't been dealt with yet." Wrong, you said calmly. "I'll go deal with it." Nan 11 understood that he wanted to check what happened last night, and didn't say much. She knew that if Gu Qingshu fell into Wrong Yu's hands, he would not have a good ending, and even asking for death would be a luxury. But so what? He asked for everything. Compared to what he did in his previous life, compared to Wrong Yu's innocent and tragic death, Nan 11 would not feel the slightest bit of pity even if Gu Qingshu was cut into pieces and tortured to death. Looking up at the man who had just become her legitimate husband last night, Nan 11 smiled and waved, signaling him to lower his head. Wrong Yu naturally bent down to cooperate. Nan 11 kissed his face, then whispered in his ear, "Last night was great, I liked it." After she finished speaking, her cheeks quickly turned red. Before he could react, Nan 11 turned over on the bed and lay down, pulling the satin quilt to cover her face, embarrassed to look at him. Wrong Yu looked at the shy girl on the bed, his mouth slightly curled up, his heart was full of happiness and joy. He leaned over and kissed the girl's red ears. "Your husband will behave better in the future, you have a good rest, and ask Yin Yu to get whatever you want to eat." After saying this, the smile on his mouth deepened a little bit. After all, he was worried about the girl's thin skin. No matter how reluctant he was, he quickly turned around and walked out. Yin Yu was waiting in the outer hall, followed by a group of maids holding basins, towels, and trays. Seeing the regent king coming out, the maids saluted one after another. "Congratulations, Your Highness, congratulations, Your Highness." On Wrong Yu's noble and handsome face, the expression was visibly less indifferent and a little warmer than usual. "The princess needs to sleep for a while, Yin Yu will go in and serve her." Yin Yu secretly thought that the princess must have been exhausted last night, and quickly agreed, "Don't worry, Your Highness, I will serve the princess well." Wrong Yu hummed and walked to the door of the palace. A black-clothed guard rushed past and knelt down at the steps of the palace. "The defense around Zhaochen Palace has been rearranged. The guard commander and Gu Qingshu are imprisoned in the dungeon. The maid who came to send gifts in the name of the queen last night has been poisoned and died suddenly. I found out that she was a maid on duty beside the queen mother and was following the queen mother's order." Wrong Yu didn't say anything. The secret guard then reported, "Yesterday, the master got married and was very happy. Gu Qingshu was not invited. He entered the palace smoothly among the guards brought by the emperor. After entering the palace, the guard commander had contact with him 3 times. Following the guards brought by the emperor? If the emperor does not allow it, how can anyone sneak into the guards around him? Rongyu was silent, his thin lips slightly pursed, and his elegant and picturesque eyebrows were stained with a cold color. Looking up at the blue sky, he walked down the jade steps without saying a word and walked towards the training camp in the northeast corner of the palace. Qingyang and the black-clothed guard who reported were silent behind him. The regent's palace covers a large area. The training camp in the northeast corner is an independent and secret house. A 3-meter-high wall separates all the scenery in the training camp. Except for the regent and the secret guard commander, this place is a forbidden place for everyone. The area of the training camp alone is equivalent to the size of an ordinary prince's mansion. However, this place is different from the prince's mansion. There are no elegant and leisurely pavilions, no spring breeze blowing on the willows, no sparkling lake, and no gardens competing for beauty. There are only rows of rooms where the shadow guards live, a wide and strict training base, and layers of life and death halls that the shadow guards need to pass through with their flesh and blood. The regent's dungeon is located under the torture hall of the training camp. It has been idle for a long time, so it has been unguarded all year round, but even if it is unguarded, outsiders can't easily set foot in the forbidden area within the high walls of the training camp. After the 2 people were captured last night, the commander of the Dark Guards transferred several masters to be on duty. At night, someone tried to rescue them, but was killed by the masters in the training camp before entering the high walls. However, these are trivial matters that are not worth mentioning. Most of those sent out to rescue people are the Dark Guards or death warriors around the Emperor. Their lives are not worth much. After they die, they are directly dealt with. There is no need to report deliberately, unless the person killed has a special identity. Rongyu hadn't been here for a long time. The training of the shadow guards in the training camp was usually in charge of the 4 great instructors, and the masters of each hall performed their duties. Rongyu was usually busy with government affairs and military camps, and rarely set foot here. But this did not mean that the shadow guards here did not know him. As soon as he stepped into the dark and solemn gate, a slight and cold breath appeared in the dead air of the training camp. No matter whether they were in the light or in the dark, they all knelt on the ground, their sharp bodies like blades knelt humbly, as if they were integrated with the air. On the bluestone ground, on the training ground, on the tree branches, the black-clothed figures were well trained. Although no sound was made, everyone's nerves were tensed in an instant. Rongyu remained silent, his face was cold and noble, and he exuded a strong pressure that made people respect and obey him. The surrounding environment did not allow him to stop for a moment. Accompanied by Qingyang and the Dark Guard leader Xianling, he walked towards the dungeon of the West Pavilion Criminal Hall. The environment in the dungeon was dark and damp, and the narrow passage was only illuminated by the oil lamp in the corner. Gu Qingshu was imprisoned in the 2nd cell. But it doesn't matter which cell he is in. This is not important. Once he enters this place, he will never leave, even if he turns into a dried-up mosquito unless his prince asks for pardon. When he opened the door of the cell, he saw a torture rack made of black iron. The body of a man with crippled hands and feet was spread out and fixed on it in a very natural but absolutely painful posture. His messy hair was scattered, covering his pale face, making him look miserable. His hands and feet were imprisoned by heavy handcuffs and shackles. Of course, even if he was intact at this time, a weak scholar could not escape from here, and his hands and feet had no strength at all. So the purpose of the shackles was simply to add a little pain to him. Rongyu stood outside the prison door. Xianling walked over and grabbed Gu Qingshu's hair coldly and neatly without mercy, forcing him to raise his face, revealing his pale face with a bluish-gray deathly look, and his distorted expression after his hair was pulled and hurt his scalp. Rongyu didn't say anything, just looked at him in silence. His face was noble and indifferent, and his eyes seemed to be surging with a violent and cruel dark color. Gu Qingshu opened his eyes, and Rongyu's noble and handsome face was reflected in his sight. His pupils suddenly shrank, and his face turned as pale as paper in an instant.